All right, what I'd like to share with you today on this Mother's Day, and what a beautiful time to be alive, is the title of it is What a Mother. Today is Mother's Day, and we honor them with gifts, cards, dinners, special time together. And these are all good things to do. You see, they have given their lives in loving service to us, their children, in ways that are too numerous to count. And yet, they're still people. They make mistakes, they fall short. And just as everybody does, they fall short of the glory of God. But that doesn't mean they're not our mothers, and they are not worthy of honor. When a mother becomes born again, though, it's like she gets supercharged being a mom. There are ways that God can train her and teach her to best do that for her children, to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And that is always the best. Now that she's born again, God works within her. She prays for her family, ministers healing, and brings grace and mercy to her household. These examples become the pattern that their children see and imitate. She is new and renewed day by day. Let's go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, where it talks about the 10 Commandments. Now, in the 10 Commandments, there are commandments and there are also consequences for not obeying those. What we're going to look at now is the commandment that when we do it, there's blessings. And it is in verse 12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. See, that's the first and only commandment that has a promise attached to it. That if we do it, then we get this blessing, which is longer days. I don't know how he does it. It's the promise. And it's reestablished in the epistles, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2. See, there's a lot of things about the Old Testament and the laws of Moses that are not applicable in this administration of grace. But there are also many of the commandments that were given in the Old Testament. It is carried over and restated in the epistles, and this is one of them. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. Here we see that this commandment from the Old Testament is restated in the epistles. This truth is universal. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3. I thank God, whom I serve from my forefathers with pure conscience, that without ceasing I have remembrance of thee in my prayers night and day. This is again Paul addressing this letter to Timothy. Verse 4. Greatly desiring to see thee, being mindful of thy tears, that I may be filled with joy. When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in thee also. This believing is passed on by example, not genetics. Okay? There's this, I have great kids, but they have to believe. It isn't that they've inherited some special gene from me that makes them better at believing or more receptive to God. That is an internal thing between them and God, that hunger is there and they want to know more. But what we can do is set the example, set the pace for them, so that for them to believe is easier for them because they're already have been practicing that principle from their childhood. As a mother, this is an awesome responsibility and not one to be taken lightly. In Proverbs chapter 31, it talks about the virtuous woman. Proverbs 31, we'll start in verse 10. Of course, anytime there's children involved, there's got to be a dad, right? And that dad is looking for a virtuous woman, a woman of quality. And I looked up virtuous because if she's going to be titled with this, good to know what it means. And this is it. Strong, powerful, have valor, and have force. A force to be reckoned with. It is not some mealy mouth, go along with everything without comparing it to the word and other issues like that. This is a woman who stands on her own 2 feet before God and brings that to the table, that she is bringing something extraordinary to the relationship. And in that relationship, they are able to have children. Now look at the qualities that that woman must have in order to be called virtuous. Verse 10, who can find a virtuous woman? And I would say powerful, strong, a woman warrior, so to speak, an Amazon, if you may.
That's what it means.
For her price is far above rubies. There's no value that you can place on it that's too high. Okay, because she's going to exceed whatever you can come up with. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. He doesn't have to go look for those riches someplace else. He has everything he could possibly have. But that's interesting that he does safely trust in her. If he have that relationship with her, does she find it easier to have honor to him? Absolutely. It's easier for the woman, the wife, to honor the husband if he trusts in her and loves her. Verse 12, she will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. And how tempting it is sometimes when we are upset, frustrated, to respond in kind. But if we are to do it right, then we don't respond evil for evil. Okay. Verse 13, she seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. In other words, she's not some princess sitting home having everything done for her. And no matter how rich the guy is, she's taking care of the household and the family. Verse 14, she is like the merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She takes care of the household. She rises also was at night, and giveth meat to her husband, and a portion to her maidens. I went through a change in life when I married Debbie, because she would always get up and make me breakfast before I went to work. Always, when I was a kid, my mom wouldn't even get up. If there wasn't Cheerios in the cabinet, I went to school hungry. But the point is that this virtuous woman, she makes sure that her family is well fed, well taken care of, as well as anybody that's in her household. 16, she considereth a field and does what? Buyeth it. She makes that decision herself. She goes out, looks at it, and goes, that's a good deal. And she buys it. You know why? Because her husband trusts her. And that trust has been earned. You know, is it like, okay, you're a 16-year-old new bride and I want you to go out and do all these business deals, but through time, she shows that she can do this. With the fruit of her hands, she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. Okay, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good. She knows that she is beautiful. She knows that her husband loves her and that she has that going for her. She doesn't have this victim mentality, or I'm not good enough, or my sisters and brothers always told me I was the ugly duckling, you know, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't enter into the picture. Her candle goeth not out by night. Now, what does that mean? It's an ancient Oriental customs that in each household there was a lamp that was lit to represent the presence of God. And she was the one responsible to make sure there was enough oil in the lamp to make it through the night. And she's diligent to do that, which means that she's always practicing the presence of God for her and her family. She layeth her hands on to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she stretcheth forth her hands to the needy. So she's looking out for others outside her own home. When she sees a need, she goes and addresses it. It isn't like going by the beggar on the street and go, get a job. No, her heart is to help. She is not afraid of the snow for her husband, for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry, her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. Known in the gate. Wherever they had a city, there was be judges for that community, and they were considered elders that would set up shop in the gates of the city. So when people have issues that they need to have judged on, or conflicts between people, they would bring it before the elders, and then they would make a decision. And that, he said, her husband has a place of honor in the community, is what it's saying. She maketh fine linen and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchants. So she's out making income for the family too. It's like Debbie has a little flower arrangement area in the garage. She's bringing in income to the family. And that's what, I don't know, have you started making clothes yet, dear? No. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. Have you ever been around people that when they speak, it just brings a smile to your face? And other people's, anything that they say makes you kind of go, You know, it's like, there's no blessing in it. There's complaints. There's worry being spoken about, but this isn't that lady. This isn't the virtuous woman. It's what she says is first one of wisdom, words of wisdom and kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. In other words, she doesn't come home, plop down in front and watch the soap operas all afternoon. Her children ariseth up and call her what? Blessed. That's the point. When a virtuous woman has children, this is the response. Now, sometimes children go through rough patches. and they get rebellious, especially around 15, 16. But the point is that eventually they're going to recognize what that mom did for them. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. And husbands, don't ever get weary of doing that. Don't ever take her for granted. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou exceedeth them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. We never have to, build up ourselves. When we do well, people will praise us. If that's what is important to you, let somebody else do it for you. If a man was called virtuous, he might have been a man of war, but this same kind of strength is in the heart of a virtuous woman. Let's go to 2 Kings, chapter 4. Here's a woman who is never named, but she has one of the great records in the Old Testament. Second Kings chapter 4, verse 8. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, which is a town, where was a great woman, a woman that was like this, known in the community, known to have respect. And she constrained him, which is a word that is like the Oriental culture or custom of constraining is, won't you come to dinner? No, I got to get going. Please come. The food's already prepared. I really got to get back. Please, if you'll bless us and please sit down to have a meal. That's called constraining. It's like a Minnesota goodbye.
Yep.
I'll explain that Orientalism later.
It's a Midwestism.
Yes. And she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. He wasn't stupid. He was a smart guy. And she said to her husband, behold, now I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, up on the roof, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in hither. First Airbnb.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, and it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And she said to him, and he said to him, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? I've got a lot of inroads with these guys. They like me. You only put in a good word. And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. She's not after that. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi said, verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. Ever heard that story before? Abraham and Sarah type situation. And he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood at the door. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And the woman conceived. That's where, okay. Well, the old man must have had at least one good one left in him, right?
Yep.
All right, so she conceived and bare a son at that season when Elisha had said unto her, in other words, 9 months, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to the lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees until noon and then died. How would you feel?
Sad.
My God, it would tear your heart out. This is a child that God gave her. And now he's dead. Unbelievable.
21.
And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door upon him and went out. Now, put it not on his own bed, not on her bed, on the bed of the man of God. She has a plan. And she called unto her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it is well. In other words, you're going to him for some religious thing? New moon and Sabbaths were religious indications for holy days and things. But her response is, what? It is well. She could have gone, our son is dead. I'm going to go see if he can do anything. She didn't even tell her husband. She didn't even want to confess that. She said, it is well. Then she saddled an ass and said unto her servant, drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So she went and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Again, no name. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with thy child? And she answered, what?
It is well.
It is well. Now there's a believing point here, is that no matter what the circumstances look like, our confession is very important. And when we confess what God has put in our hearts, and we confess what the Word of God says, then we're going to get the promises of God. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. Now that was again a sign of respect and being humble. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Now he thought this was unusual. He would have said it if he didn't think that this was out of the ordinary, that God wouldn't have told him about this.
Right.
But now he is starting to catch up. Okay. And then she said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Was that a request? Did I not say, do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, gird up my loins and take my staff in thine hand and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. That was his first revelation. And Gehazi passed on before them. In other words, they're going. He's out ahead of them. And
Verse 30.
yeah. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. and he arose and followed her. So Gehazi is out front, and these two are following up behind. And Gehazi passed on before them and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, saying, the child is not awakened. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. And he went in therefore and shut the door upon them twain, the both of them, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and laid upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. So his heart started beating. Okay. So his heart started beating, starting to get blood flow. That's when the flesh warms up. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro. And that's another thing about working with God. Sometimes you just got to get quiet. There was something that was going on that it didn't get full restoration at that first trying. So he goes and he starts praying to God. He's pacing back and forth, getting quiet. What do I do, Father? And then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times. Normally I'm a 3 sneezer. Oh, he went 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite. I don't know if he just had a block on her name. He was going to her house all the time, but get that Shunammite in here. So he called her, and when she had come in unto him, he said, take up thy son. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And then he goes on down the road.
Yep.
It was just another one of the many things that God did with him. But many times we look at this and want to go, what a great man of God. And I see, what a mother.
Yeah.
She wasn't ever going to let up.
Yep.
She loved that child, and she wasn't going to just give up. We never told her name, but the strength of her believing is there for all of us to see. What a mother.
Yep.